Yeah, I wanted to do a follow-on episode. I'm disappointed that I have to, but there's a lot of, I don't want to say controversy because that's not fair. I want to say there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of murmuring, there's a lot of misering still around Libero Financial. And that some of it's misinformation and some of it's factual information and some of it's legitimate again, I don't think that certain people understand what Libero has said versus what they've done. And so consider this until and unless whatever happens, happens, right? Something's going to happen with Libero Financial. Either there's going to be a bunch of people, well, there's certain things that's guaranteed, but either it's going to keep on doing what it's doing, or at some point it's going to start failing. And by failing, that's either failing by intent or failing by incident. Let me just summarize what I'm saying. At no point have I said that Libero is legitimate as a project, and I will quote my phrase again. Just because it's a scam doesn't mean you can't make money. Just because you make money doesn't make it not a scam. You got to resonate what that statement's saying. You could have a project that is a complete, absolute catastrophe of a project, but you can still make money. You can have a project where you're making money and it looks legit on the face and then eventually turns into a scam. An example of the first one, where you get into a thing, right? And it's clearly there's something not quite right here. And then all of a sudden it turned out you did make some profit, you were able to get out. To do that, you'd have to have the strategy that I talked about, which is that you take your profit on a regular basis. I think a lot of the people that I'm about to be talking about, they struggle with this because they've been conditioned by the crypto business of hold. And so in their mind, that's the trap that they place themselves into. You've placed yourself into a trap of just leaving your investment in a thing because you want, let's go, because you want it to go to $1 million. And so you're not managing your own risk. You're not controlling your own risk. The whole game is about controlling your risk. It's not about ducking risk, because ducking risk is the reason that you FOMO in, because you're running away from projects that could get you a thing. And in some cases, yes, it's somewhat of a lottery, but that's true of any project. So I'm going to be going down a list on this side. I'm going to be going down a list of projects that met that criteria from my perspective so that I can debunk some of what's been said and acknowledge what others been said, but I also want to counter that. But on the other side, projects where it looks legit on the surface, everything looks clean, right? And then it happens to rug pull, honeypot, whatever, and you lose out. Tsuzuki did that, right? Tsuzuki was legitimized by Saitama team. You can say that's not true. That's exactly what happened, because Tsuzuki, didn't nobody know about that crap until they went on the AMA with Russ, who basically legitimized them because of his presence and because of his awareness and because of the cult that follows him and him not denouncing it. They bought in to the okie doke, where they claimed every token that they were going to talk to that's going to be on this Cytomask thing was fully vetted, fully investigated. We know who they are. We know what it is. And then what happens? The thing turns into a rug pull. People start digging. Turns out that big money was sent to Tsuzuki from the Saitama folks. That's sketchy, but nobody knew it because nobody bothered investigating it, because they all, Russ, we trust. The cult followed. They followed the leader, and that's what happened. They got pulled. That's not on them. That's on Russ for advocating for something, and he did by putting them inside a mask. And it's on you for blind following of a cult leader at that time. So that's what happened with Tsuzuki. But here's the thing. Tsuzuki, from all intents, as far as the code, had its risks. All of the contracts, there's not a single contract in creation that doesn't have certain levels of risk attributed to them, whether it's the whole renounce conversation, which we talked about, and the whole issue with Shinji and them saying we're not going to renounce. He gave a very good example about renouncing, where he said some of these exchanges that you want to get on, they want you to maintain whitelists, meaning that they want you to have their wallets whitelisted for whatever. And you can't do that if you renounce the ownership unless you did a function in the code. But then the problem is, if you do a function in the code and you leave your address as a non-owner in there, be able to do that, then you haven't really fully renounced, right? Because then you could whitelist, devs. Now you could have a situation where you can whitelist, but you can't blacklist. And then of course that mitigates risk, but none of them do that because maybe the exchange has a situation where a wallet gets hacked. Think Bitmart, right? Think crypto.com, and they need to blacklist certain addresses. Well, if that happens, then what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to create an account, a wallet that has the ability to do that, functions to be able to do that. Well, now that's rug pull risk, because now you can basically block whoever you want out of it. You can go through the entire list of BSC scan or Polygon scan or Ether scan and literally just paste in all these addresses and blacklist all of them except your own. How's that any different? It's not. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to stop with the narrative of that renouncing solves all problems, because unless you're a token like Affinity, who has said no exchanges, then you're going to need to keep the ownership, at least to maintain until it gets to the point that the exchanges are happy and they don't expect to need your involvement. And then at some point you may be able to renounce. But other than that, you're not going to get on the major exchanges, because you still have to have the ownership in place in order to maintain those lists. That's part of the reason why Saitama, you don't see it widespread at this point. It's on exchanges, but certainly not on many of the big players, is because from what I can tell, they renounced the ownership on the contract. From what I can tell, that may or may not be true, and I'll get to that in a second. Now, down the road, we saw with Libero, after it launched, we saw staggering growth. We see staggering growth now. As I record this, it's getting dangerously close to the penny mark. There's going to be sales. People are going to sell off because they are already millionaires because of how much they put in the darn thing. The comments keep coming back about the fact that there's only one holder, one Libero holder versus Titano. There's one Libero holder that they airdropped. And I talked about that on my response episode, where I said that's a marketing strategy. We know that they're doing that. Many tokens do that. And the tokens that do that aren't necessarily scams. They're doing it because it's the only way to appeal to people and to entice people. But you got to think about it. The holder count doesn't do anything to benefit them in of itself. It's really just to get the word out there to a bunch of people so that they are tempted to buy in, right? If later they want to get on exchange, that is something that they may consider. But the holder count that they have right now, they're eligible to be on the lesser exchanges. Well, once it gets on exchanges, the whole game changes, because they're not going to be able to offer the same level of tokenomics, I would argue, that they do today. But I flipped that by saying, you're in finance. You're in finances. It skyrocketed and it got on exchanges perfectly fine. So we can't just assume that, they're going to be able to do it or they're not going to be able to do it. Ultimately, it's a waiting game. You don't know. So now on the Titano, I was looking at the Titano coin market cap this morning, and I've watched Titano. I see that the newness is gone, number one. Number two, Libero has mechanics that Titano lacks. That's period. It's not a carbon copy. There's mechanics that are built that have what appear to have stabilized the value of Libero better than what Titano could do. So it's not a straight carbon copy from what I can tell. Well, when I look at what people are saying about both sides, they're basically saying that Titano, for whatever reason, there's a confidence that it's not a scam. Okay. And they're basing this off of the social media responses. They're basing this off the fact that the devs are triggered. I would counter this by saying every token, with slight exceptions, like Parabolic, but vast majority of them have triggered devs. Saitama has triggered devs. They're all triggered. SHIB has triggered devs. They're less than they used to be, but they're still triggered. I can go down the list. That's the nature of cryptocurrency. The devs get in and they get triggered, especially if they rely on Telegram. Any token that heavily relies on Telegram is probably triggered at heart. And then some of them are reasonable after you call them out and they're triggered. They're reasonable and they'll come back down to earth. But the vast majority are just triggered. KEANU's devs, they're triggered. They'll ban you out of the darn thing for anything. Shibnobi. So I can't hold triggered devs against them. Nobody likes it, but it's not unique to them. That's my point. So it's not fair to isolate them for something that the vast majority of them do, right? So I can't hold social media behaviors against them because the vast majority do what they're doing. The vast majority do not. They don't behave like I think they should. I can't hold the fact that the performance is unrealistic. Right? The performance is unreasonable. It's unreasonable levels of growth. We know it's unreasonable levels of growth. So that's why you test it. And you go off the statement they said, which is we're going to make money. Okay. I test it. I put in a small amount of money and I watch it. Does it grow? Number one. The answer was yes, by a lot. Okay. Can I withdraw it? Yes. Okay. That passes. Did they rip me off on the way out? No. It's pennies. Okay. Cool. So they passed what they said they were going to do today, right? So then because I know they passed what they said they were going to do today, and because we don't know what the future holds, and this applies to any token, we don't know what the future holds with this dude, I'm not going to leave significant amounts of money in it at any time because it doesn't make sense, because it's a high risk asset. I've always said that it's a high risk investment. There's nothing wrong with high risk investments. You just have to manage your risk. For me, that's never leaving a significant amount in there for any sustained period of time, because I know that whatever it is unsustainable. However, they're able to get it to grow in the short term, cool, because I see that it's able to drop the zeros. I see that people are able to take profits. So they pass that test. However, I also know that as it gets closer to that penny, there are going to be people who cash out. There is an anti-whale, but there's going to be people who cash out. So regardless of anything else, people are going to cash out. When I talked about market move, and I suggest you go look at it, market move tells me that nobody holds significant bags at this point. Nobody holds, because that means that the people who are buying in, they don't hold what would be, like there's, I think 5 billion or whatever on this thing. Nobody holds like 1 billion of the tokens. They hold tens of millions, and okay, that's no different than any other token. And the number of high level holders is not significant. So because of that, I know that when they sell, and they're going to sell, it's going to have a dip. It's going to have an impact. We've probably already had a whale sell out when it dipped just earlier. Okay, it came back up and it's still growing. So we're seeing that people are buying in. The volume is now 3 times what it was. So we're seeing people are buying into it. We see more buys than sells. We see healthy activity. What we don't see yet is, again, I speculate, once it hits that penny, and it probably already did, but once it hits that penny, we're going to see some sells, and that's cool. I want it to do that because that tells me that people can sell, and that tells me that it's not, at least not a honeypot where it would prevent you from selling, because that would be another thing that you would look for is, can I sell or can I not sell, right? That would be a honeypot if they blocked you from selling and then took the money out on the back end. So then people were calling out that, well, they can raise the dang fee, for sales. And of course, when you raise the sell fee to a certain threshold or greater, then it technically is a block, right? If you can raise the sell fee to 60%, technically it could be a honeypot. I would argue many tokens have that mechanic. They have a mechanic where they will skyrocket the sell fee as a disincentive to selling to sustain it, especially when it's having hard times. If it's under, whale sell off, and they'll raise the sale fee. There's 2 points to this. One, because there's a reflection. You're going to benefit huge if they did do that. Number 2, just because they raise the fee doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to mean anything, because I would remind you, many other tokens have this ability to change the sell fee because of the anti-whale, number 1. But number 2, a lot of the tokens started creating the marketing gimmick, and it's yet another gimmick. And that's why I want to speak about it, because I think a lot of people don't understand these gimmicks that are being introduced are not specific to, nor will they be isolated to what, Libero's doing. It's all over the place. Many tokens do that. Many tokens will introduce things where they will say, we'll offer a discount on the taxes for this weekend. So there's no tax. You can buy as much as you want with no taxes. Or they'll say, we're in a good spot. We're going to lower the tax now so that people can, if you want to sell out for profit or whatever. EarnHub has a similar mechanic where they'll change, the fees involved and then offer it as a discount. Dozilla has the same thing. Dozilla's all over the place at this point. Dozilla's audited. So we have to separate all these different things. We do evaluate them collectively, but we can't just attack any one individual mechanic. We can't just attack airdrops, because as you know, most of the migrations use airdrops. So we're not going to say every migration is a scam. It is what it is. Airdrop is a mechanic, right? And certain times they'll use airdrops to entice people, or at least make them aware about this project. And certain times they'll airdrop it because, like, if you go to L Bank right now, they're offering airdrops all over the place. Are you telling me every last one of those is a scam? If you go to KuCoin right now, airdrops all over the place. Hotbit, airdrops all over the place. We cannot just attack airdrops, number 1. 2, when we talk about the change of sell fees, again, most of these projects that I'm describing, other than Libero, all have the ability to change the sell fee because that was a gimmick. That's a thing that they do in order to appeal. It's another marketing thing that they do. It doesn't make it a scam because they can change it. What should and would concern you is not whether they can change it. It's evaluating the frequency of them changing it, the amount of those changes, and of course the communication. We can't really rely on the communication to a heavy degree because they're triggered devs. Okay, so then what do you do about it? You leave a little bit in there. You don't leave the vast majority in there because you never know if they are going to yank the darn thing or not. Do you understand? It's all about you managing your risk. They're not going to take care of you, and you shouldn't expect them to take care of you, and you shouldn't expect them to coddle you. You have to manage your own risk. Don't YOLO in, don't FOMO in. And if you do FOMO in, or you do buy for your own reason, don't leave a lot in there. Take profit. Don't hold. Stop. You have to break that narrative of hold, hold, hold. That's the trap. The trap is when you leave it in there to where you do get pulled, and now significant amounts of money has been taken from you. There's a person, he's a known person in certain circles. His name's Virgil. If you watched old day WWF, he is the man who escorted the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, to the ring. Virgil now, he's basically his own meme. Virgil has a phrase, fuck money. This refers to money that's just throwaway. As he describes it, it's money you can just wipe your ass with. It's money that you'd buy a giraffe and throw him down the stairs with. It's money that you just throw away. You don't get, it's whatever. It's that's all you should be investing in high risk projects is throwaway money. Money you know you can lose. Money that you don't care if you lose it. Money you're not so fixated on it. You're like, well, now I can't make money. That's not true, because what that amount is changes for different people. Here's the truth, folks. Libero Financial, for every time I'm now at number 6 of my profit take. Each time that I bought in separately, it's doubled, and I've been able to sell at a very low fee. So let's say your throwaway money is $100. So you take $100 of profit, you leave the 100 in there, you let it grow again, you take another 100, you let it grow again, you take another 100. What's the problem? You just keep taking hundreds until you can't. And then the moment you can't, it doesn't matter, because you profited $300, $400, $500, $600, and you may have lost only 100. That's the math. But so what if you can't take that 100 out? Who cares? You're up 600. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you can sell for profit today. I don't know that'll still be the case. Maybe there is a point where they make it to where you can't sell. Maybe there is a point where they yank liquidity. Maybe there is a point where it crashes because it's unsustainable growth. You don't know. I don't know. Because you don't know, you have to mitigate risk. Your mitigating risk might be, I'm just not going to invest in it. That's cool. I'm simply telling you, from a strategy perspective, this is actually the perfect example of a project that uses that principle of taking profit and not holding, and the reasons why, because it looks too good to be true. However, today, right now, it is performing the way they told you. And you have to stop with the temptation to just hold to get to $1 million. However, there could be a future state where they turn out perfectly fine. Certic comes back and they're perfectly clean. And you're going to feel like a fool if you didn't go in at all. And you can still make that profit because they're still growing. The price is still moving. It doesn't even matter. Like later, that same investment of $100, whether the price is, $5, you could still put $100 in there. And if it still is at a velocity where it's doubling, you're still going to get that same return. So my summary thoughts here, I have never said that Libero is legitimate. What I said is right now, today, it's behaving the way they told me. You are going to take profit on this. You're going to make money, and we're going to make sure you get it. Okay. All of that came true. I invested a reasonable amount of money that I didn't care about. I watched the darn thing double. I took profits. I watched it double again. I took profits. I repeated this 3 more times. I sat on it because it dipped a little bit, as I figured it should, because people should be selling for profit. I watched it go up again. I put a little bit more money in there again. I'm watching it double again. And it's still on its double, and it's still getting reflections, and it's still performing the way they told me. I can't hate on that because that's what they told me. They told me we're here for you to get profit. And I'll tell you, if you are at a point where you're skeptical You should be. I'm skeptical. But just because you're skeptical doesn't mean that you can't make money. Just because it's a scam doesn't mean you can't make money. Just because you make money doesn't make it not a scam. We just don't know. But as an investor, I would rather, if you tell me I can take profit, I'd rather test you on that theory. And if I could take profit, I'll take the profit. I don't care at that point if you scam me later, because I got my money. I got the profit because that's what you told me. Profit. It's not trying to change the world. It might, but it's not trying to. It's not advertising that it would. It's not advertising that it's going to be legitimate in any way. It's telling you you're going to make money. Cool. But if you're a whole type person and you're assuming I'm just going to leave $200,000 in this thing, you, at this point, you'd made a lot of freaking money. And there's going to come a point where this plateaus. We haven't hit the plateau yet because it doesn't have enough holders. I'm talking holders of actual investments. It doesn't have enough holders yet. So it's going to plateau. We don't know where it plateaus. I will say this, as myself, I would not want to be that kind of guy who sees an opportunity, and that's what it is, for profit, where they tell me that's what they're there for, where I can just drain some profit out of it and move on, and then go to projects that I can invest that money back into that I more believe is long-term holds. So I hope, I doubt it, but I hope that this has been helpful and people understand a little better that it's not just about whether a project's legitimate. Sometimes your strategy is around what they're telling you. Is it going to be generating money as a return on your investment? If you get to return on your investment, you should already be thumbs up and you're cool, and it doesn't matter about the rest of it. Then you can just literally sit and marinate because the rest of that's raw profit. I do believe that some of the feedback on Libero is coming from Titano supporters, and that's cool, but you got to understand it's just because you're in one doesn't mean you don't have to invest in the other one. You can invest in multiple projects. Some people may not know that, but you can invest in multiple projects and have different priorities. You can have different investment strategies. For one investment, you may choose to just sit on it because you like the devs so darn much that you feel like it's worth that time. I would argue, though, that tokens where you do like the devs frequently don't succeed long term. Do you know why? Because when you like the devs and they're cool people, they're the ones that are not as aggressive on advertising and marketing and getting it out there. I saw people talk about bots for Libero Financial's marketing. Marketing is a very shady business in general. I'm not even talking crypto. It's designed to catch attention. It's designed to get people to buy into your product. Libero appears to have done a good job because regardless of the airdrop, there are people still buying in on a regular basis, which means their marketing is doing the job that KEANU INU sucks at. So I can't fault them for that. I actually praise them for being able to do it without human intervention to an excessive degree. I'm not going to criticize them for marketing. I have college education in marketing. I have a business certificate. I understand what they would have had to go to, given that there's not a tangible product to get the word out. And I understand that the appeal is really coming from what they have presented to investors in their potential price movement. I also understand that because it's on the Binance chain, it right there, it's already 50% on the risk side. And because of the unreasonable levels of growth, I understand that risk is significant compared to other projects. I understand all that as an investor, and you should recognize that it is a very risky investment. But risky investments aren't the ones that you just avoid because they're risky. You manage your risk. The best way to manage your risk outside of research, which I told you, go to Market Move and look at Market Move's results and tell me what in the Market Move results tells you high risk. The number one thing I can call out, there are owner functions that they can execute, the tax that they can change. Okay, many other tokens have that. I'm not going to hold it against them. It's their risks. I just have to manage those properly, and that should be okay. Beyond that, what is there? You just don't YOLO into it. Don't YOLO into it and don't hold long term. Train yourself to take profits. Train yourself to not leave it there. Don't put a significant amount that you don't care about. Invest money that you don't care about. You throw it away. You come back at it a week later and you see the darn thing's doubled. Take profits off of it. If you took profits, cool. You're back at square one. Then just let that money sit there and grow, and just let it grow because you're already back at zero. You're already back on your full ROI. And I'll do a separate episode about that calculation and why I think that makes sense, especially for projects like this one, especially for ones with unreasonable levels of growth, so that you can learn, ideally, how to just focus on the numbers, focus on the math of a project as a risk mitigation strategy, and start caring less about the legitimacy of the project. Because for a project that openly, transparently tells you we're here to make sure you make money, to me, the paradigm has to change. You have to think of it differently. You have to think of it as it's basically a cash grab. That's what it is. So I'm not going to treat it like a hold. And that might mean I miss out. This guy could be legitimate and I might have missed out on millions and millions of dollars, but I'm okay with it because my risk mitigation strategy is for something like this. I'm not going to give them significant amounts of my money for a long time. I'm going to take profit from it. And at some point my bag will hit zero, and then I'll put some more in and I'll take some more profit out of it. And then it'll hit zero and I'll put some more in and I'll take some more profit. And at no point would I leave more than I care to lose in the thing. Meanwhile, I can take those profits and invest in other projects that I believe in are more long-term. They're safer investments. That's a diverse portfolio 101. You have your high risk ones, you have your medium risk ones, you have your total safe ones. That's what you should do. Don't just jump to one project. Don't just jump on the numbers. Don't just jump on loyalty. Don't just jump on sentiment. And certainly don't just jump because their Telegram is cool and fun. You have to learn to have different investment strategies, regardless of what you see and what you hear, based on your managing of risk. Because at the end of the day, folks, it's your wallet. It's your money. You can invest in whatever you want to. You should go where the money takes you. But I'm simply saying this and many other tokens in crypto in general, but certainly ones like this, you got to change the thought process. You cannot use the straight line to really evaluate one like this because of what they told you. They told you the goal of this is to make money. The test should be, can I make money? They passed. Test 2 should be, can I withdraw money? They pass. The test 3 should be, are the taxes to withdraw money egregious today? The pass. Test 4 should be, is it still making money? Pass. And then you repeat step 1. As long as all that's true for something like this, they're performing. They're doing what they told you they would do. Everything else is moot. Nothing else matters. From my perspective, you're wasting time trying to denounce a thing or trying to be proven right, because if it does pull later, what have you achieved? Nothing. Because from the day it launched up to that point, if it ever comes, which none of us know, but from that span of time, there are people out there that made tons of money. By that logic, we shouldn't be advocating drip, because drip would be the same thing. Unrealistic levels of growth. The difference is drip's numbers don't make any sense. Libero's numbers make sense. Libero's graph makes sense. There's sales happening. People are able to sell the thing. It's not just locked in a thing. You're able to price move the thing. There's significant amounts of buy-in and sell out happening on a regular basis. And there's more buys than sells. It has the interest. It has the velocity. And they've never, to date, stopped people from doing it, unlike drip that locks up all your crap. So let's be realistic. We have to be fair to the token based on the strategy that they tell you. Drip has the same basic strategy they're telling you, which is passive income and you're going to be able to make wealth, but then it locks your money and doesn't allow you to withdraw the vast majority of it. Meanwhile, somebody on the back can access that money and essentially pull you whenever they feel like it. Somebody else is getting enriched while you're not. Otherwise, you have to create your own pyramid scheme in order to get the money, which traps them and makes you look bad. Versus something like Libero that says you can put as much in as you want or as little bit as you want and watch it grow. And as it grows, you can take profit and it's cheap to do it. At some point, que sera, sera. But for now, it's doing what they told me it would do, which is you can make money and we're not going to stop you from making money for as long as it lasts. So it's up to you, folks. But if you're Titano through and through, stay Titano. But that doesn't mean you have to only trade one project. You can trade multiple projects, so you can test it. Test it with $5. Literally test it with $5 if you want, and see what I'm saying is true. Test that you can sell it. See what I'm saying is true. And I certainly encourage you guys, get up on Market Move, because Market Move will educate you that it's a different game and you can think about it differently and still make some money.